and then another office in Pineville by the Carolina Place Mall. And to get us started, we'll just throw in a little laugh for you guys, hopefully. When your toddler has a tantrum over nothing, sometimes you're probably asking yourself, why are you the way that you are? But to contrast that, I always love to start this presentation out with this quote that I heard at a conference, and I'll read it for you guys. If a child doesn't know how to read, we teach them. If a child doesn't know how to swim, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to multiply, we teach. And if a child doesn't know how to drive, we teach. But if a child doesn't know how to behave, do we teach or do we punish? Why can't we finish the last sentences automatically as we finish the others? So part of this presentation is really going to be focused less on adults and how we are reacting to our kids and what we need to do. But I do want to spend some time to remind you that our kids, their brains are so rapidly growing every single day. And I hope that you leave this presentation with a view that behavior is a skill that needs to be taught. It's just not inherent knowledge that our kids have. So never in this presentation should it be assumed that because kids engage in behavior, they are manipulative or sneaky or cunning. They are just learning about how to operate in their environment. They are learning how to communicate with other people. And I hope that you take that mindset away from this presentation, that our kids are always just trying to communicate something to us. And it's our job to interpret that and help them communicate it better the next time. So when we talk about challenging behavior throughout this presentation, we'll be talking about the whole gamut of challenging behavior. So that might be that my kid throws their sippy cup on the ground every time I give it to them, all the way up to my kid is aggressive to their siblings, or my kid is having huge tantrums at bedtime and we can't go to bed until 1 a.m. in the morning. So when we're considering this huge plethora of behaviors, we need to consider that challenging behavior is developmentally appropriate. Children are not tiny adults, so we cannot have the same expectations on them as we do for ourselves or for our coworkers or for other adult members of our family, that their brains are just not developed to handle these crazy situations that are coming at them. To make anyone feel better, research shows that tantrums are going to peak between the ages of 18 and 24 months, and then again between 42 and 48 months. So sorry to burst your bubble, but the terrible twos is a myth. It's really like the terrible 1.5s and the terrible 3.5s. But they're all lovely, lovely kiddos, and we are along on this journey to teach them what they need to know. We've already talked a little bit that behavior is communication. Whenever your kid is throwing themselves on the floor in the middle of Harris Teeter, just remind yourself, my kid is trying to tell me something. My kid is trying to tell me something and they can't tell me with their words. And the reason that kids engage in this behavior is because it works. Sometimes I think it's helpful to step back from a situation and be like, gosh, can you believe that Annie threw herself on the floor in the grocery store and screamed and freaked out, and she didn't stop crying until I put goldfish in the cart, and then we got home and she was happy as can be. I don't understand why she did that. She did it because she wanted goldfish and she got them. So next time we go to Harris Teeter, it might be a tricky situation. So when we think about this behavior, always be thinking about what's happening before, what's happening after. But again, it's all communication. If she could have said, hey, I'd really like some goldfish for a snack, that would have been nice. But instead, they like to use other more effective, immediate ways to communicate. So what we're going to do today is talk about behavior in a 4-prong approach. So this behavior methodology we've talked about a lot at CFD, and behavior is not just influenced by one single part of a child's personality or one single part of a child's day. So when we talk about behavior, I want us to consider all parts of this. So the first thing that we're going to consider at a kid's core is their temperament. So that is their emotional personality. It is, you might have a spicy child, you might have a calm kiddo, you might have someone who's introspective, you might have a sweet, crazy extrovert on your hands, but we want to consider just their personality and how they react to others. The next thing we want to consider when we're talking about behavior is consider their developmental stage. So again, our kids are not tiny adults. They need help. 2-year-olds do not know the same things as 4-year-olds, who do not know the same things as 6-year-olds. And so we have to frame our mindset in where they are developmentally. In addition to that, we want to consider what their daily condition has been. So even the tiniest trigger can be really, really hard for these young kids. It might have been like a day like today where you can't go out on the playground at preschool, and that can throw off an entire afternoon routine. It might be that grandma is visiting in town. It might be that I didn't like what was served for lunch today, so now I'm really hungry. So all of those can influence behavior. I know we've all been hangry ourselves, and our tiny people just cannot handle it. And then the last thing we'll talk about is nurture, or how you're reacting to your child's challenging behavior. When we talk about nature versus nurture, these all kind of go together. A child's nature is going to be their temperament, their developmental stage, their daily condition. And then nurture is really the only thing that we can directly change based upon what the adult can do. So we're going to talk about how to support all of the nature-y type things, as well as what to do when inevitably the challenge behavior is going to occur. The goal of this is not for your house to be sunshine and rainbows all day, every day, but for you to feel confident and equipped to work with your children and talk about them in a way that promotes their well-being and builds their confidence. But never is your house going to be without some sort of challenging behavior, just because that's the developmental stage that we're in. So, Marie, would you like to jump in now?
Sure, yeah.
If you want to take a second to introduce yourself, and then you can go from there.
Absolutely. So, hey, everyone. Thank y'all so much for joining us. Like Shelly said, I know this is a gross rainy day and you guys are busy. So thanks for making time to be here today. What it's going to go through now on our slideshow, we're just talking about kind of this 4-prong approach to behavior and how we can address that. And just to kind of narrow it down, we can address each one of these stages in 4 different ways. So temperament, we're going to be looking at addressing it through relationship. Developmental stage, we're going to be looking at addressing it through rules. Daily condition, we can address through routine. And nurture, we're going to address by our reaction. How do we react? How do we manipulate that situation to know what to do next with our kiddos? So starting off, we're going to start with temperament. Temperament is really going to focus on our relationship with our child. We really want to be fostering a relationship that can build confidence, that can have trust between the parent and child. And a way that we can do this is by kind of looking at our negative or neutral interactions compared to our positive interactions with our children. We really want to make sure that we are not just the person that's giving the directions, that's giving the demands and reprimands and all of that. We want to make sure that we're also known as the positive interactions and the play that we're engaging with our kids. And whether that's praise or touch or smiles or nonverbals, just throughout the day, making sure that that's part of your day and not just the directions that you might feel like you're barking all day long. But it's really a ratio that we can keep in mind while we're doing that. Is a 1-to-4 ratio. So for every 1 reprimand or negative interaction you're having to have with your child, that you would also have 4 positive ones that you're able to give praise and able to have those kind of just positive moments to balance out times where there is maybe more of a sticky situation. And how do we do that? Kind of what is the way that we can set ourselves up well for that, set our children up well? And that is by behavior specific praise. So a lot of times maybe these children are hearing, whether at school or at home throughout the day, great job, oh, way to go. And while they're maybe used to that or like that, it's really effective for our children if they have behavior specific praise. So we can do that by giving them praise immediately and identifying the behavior when we praise them, and also being genuine with our praise. So we want our kids to really make sure that we know that we're connecting on this moment, that we see them, and whatever the behavior is, we want to just make sure that we are specifically calling that out, that they know, here's what I'm doing well, here's exactly what mom or dad likes. And we want that to be the connection to the positive experience, so that they are connecting. This praise thing is pretty fun. And I know it sounds silly sometimes you may feel ridiculous just kind of being so specific about what they're doing, but it really is just going to help in the long run to make them make that connection between what they're doing well and how to keep doing that in the future. So we're going to ask for some audience participation. Feel free to jump in the chat. And I know sometimes it feels just really simple to say, but I think kind of just getting in that habit of replacing here's what I could have said, here's what I can say instead, can be a helpful process to go through. So we're going to look at if you were telling your child, go put your shoes on, and then they follow through and do put their shoes on, instead of just saying, good girl, you could say, good girl, you put your shoes on, just specifically reinforcing that behavior. Instead of saying, nice job, you could say, you waited for mommy, nice job. So well, I guess for this next one, we can think of if your child is doing an art project, instead of just saying awesome, what is something that you could say instead? Feel free to chat or just say it to yourselves if no one's in the chatting mood this rainy Monday. We get that too.
Marie, since I'm sharing screen, I actually can't see the chat, so you feel free
Perfect.
to jump into that as well.
Well, no worries. Yeah, I'll let you guys have that second to brainstorm. Awesome. We could just say instead, like, awesome, I love how you put the glitter on the top of your paper, just really specifically jumping in, showing them that, oh, I'm actually looking at your paper and I know what you're doing. If your child is sharing and you see them doing a great job sharing with a sibling, instead of just saying you're the best, you could say, I love how you gave Jack a turn with the blocks too. So sounds simple, but I know just kind of helpful to hear those examples, and kind of, I feel like you'll catch yourself more once you kind of think through it and are more aware of it. You start to catch yourself and kind of reframe how you're praising your child.
Marie, can I jump in? I would say that there's also so much research that helps expand their vocabulary and language. So there's a lot of reasons to label that praise. It does feel kind of weird at first, but it gets better. Think about how preschool teachers talk. They do a lot of, like, nice job using the blue crayon,
Definitely. Yep.
It's so silly, but it's so funny to watch when we use behavior specific praise with kids who've never really experienced it before. They'll be sitting there doing something and you're like, I love how you're reading that book, and they look up and they're like, yes,
Oh,
I
you
do.
And
it's just a sweet way to connect with kids, to label their environment like Gretchen mentioned, and we just want to keep in mind that 1-to-4 ratio, which sounds daunting, but it can be so easy. Just literally narrate all of the normal, great, expected things that your kids are doing. So,
definitely. Yeah. And the same, it goes both ways if we're talking about behavior specific praise, but also kind of these behavior specific directions. So kind of this phrase of mom ease that maybe some of us are used to falling in the trap of instead of just saying settle down, or do I have to tell you again, what were you thinking? Kind of these general phrases that a lot of times can cause just shame and frustration or confusion for our kids if they're, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing. I just know that it's wrong. And now I feel like I'm doing bad and I want to make mom happy. And so just kind of trying to avoid the mommies, and more specifically, just we're also giving behavior specific praise. We want to give behavior specific direction. So we're kind of avoiding this Charlie Brown teacher voice. You don't want your kids drowning you out of the want in the background. We want to be able to just tell them clearly and precisely and simply what we want. So instead of just telling them to settle down, we can tell them it's too loud, use your quiet voice. Instead of telling them, do I have to tell you again? We can tell them, pick up your toys, then we go outside. And instead of what were you thinking? We can tell them.
That one's an audio.
This was for you guys. Yeah. Give you a second to think. Instead of what were you thinking, we could just tell them, instead maybe they hit a sibling or we're reacting to that. We can just tell them it's not okay to hit. We don't use our hands for hitting. And instead of, you know better, maybe if they've made a mess and the playroom is a total disaster, instead of bringing about that kind of statement that could just add confusion or shame, just saying it's time to clean up.
A lot of times when we throw these words out, like I like to consider that when I was growing up, when like our parents used all these phrases, these are like ancient phrases, but they never worked on us. Like when our moms would tell us, like, do I have to tell you again? And it's like, probably you did have to tell me again because I didn't get it the first time. So saying these kind of just ambiguous phrases when we're giving feedback to kids can be really confusing because a 2-year-old does not know what it means to settle down. Like we just really don't know. And so don't be afraid to be specific, and you get what you ask for. So really try and target really specifically what behavior you're looking for in your kids.
Right. And so the second way that we can look at this kind of approach to behavior is through developmental stage. Like Shelly was saying, this is kind of where they're at developmentally, age-wise, kind of skills that they've acquired. And the way that we can really help address this is through rules. Maybe that causes some anxiety, or people think, oh, I don't want to be the bad cop, I don't want to be mean parent setting these boundaries for my kids. But research shows that really these boundaries can be so helpful and healthy for our children as they grow, and just knowing these clear boundaries to keep them safe, to keep expectations clear, and that can really help our children as we're working through this world of behavior. So they're not tiny adults, as Shelly said. It can be so hard to remember that in the moment when things are going crazily and we want to just have an easy fix, but we need to just take that time to teach. When it's easier to just kind of brush it off or use settle down, kind of those other phrases, we want to make sure that we're setting them up well to have rules so that they can kind of know what to expect. And two ways that we can really focus on doing that are setting rules one time, and also that the rules don't change. So with rules happening one time, really the value of this direction you're giving is going to decrease over time. Each time it's repeated, it's kind of drowned out more. So we really want to focus on just sternly and strongly delivering that the first time and then following through on that. And that can look like the rules not changing. So we don't want the rules to change just based on our child complying or not complying. So if your child does follow the direction, does go get their shoes on, it's ready to leave, we don't want that to lead to, oh, okay, listen, now we'll do this rule in this direction and this rule. We really want to encourage them that when they are following the rules, that's leading to reinforcement, that's leading to good experiences and not just more rules being piled on. And on the flip side of that, also, we don't want kids who are not complying to have rules changed for them. So your child is not following the direction. We don't want to reframe things and change the direction and, okay, now you only have to do this, or we really just want to stick to that initial direction and clearly deliver it the first time so that they can be expected to follow through. And if they don't listen, which I'm sure none of them would, but if they don't listen, we're really just looking at following through on that. We don't want to focus on ignoring them, nagging them, bribing, negotiating. We really, like Shelly said, we're really teaching these tiny adults. We want to make them not tiny adults, tiny humans. We want to teach them these skills to just in the community and their schools and other settings, be able to be prepared for when other adults are giving them those directions. So really your own roof, it can be this great opportunity to be teaching and guiding and prompting. We often like to say you're not going to make them totally prompt dependent. Your teaching isn't going to get them kind of stuck and they're not going to go off to college unable to follow directions or clean up their room, that kind of thing. So just remembering that this is really your opportunity to teach those. And when you're giving those directions, just making sure you're setting your child up well, where you know that they know how to do the thing that you're asking them to do. And the best way we can do this really is setting your child up well, but also setting yourself up well to have follow through with that, is to have statements versus questions, and also to offer choices. So when we're offering statements versus questions, we really want to make sure that they're listening the first time. And so making that expectation clear the first time. So kind of more of this back and forth, but instead of, can you come here, just saying, please come here. Instead of saying, will you brush your teeth? Just say, time to brush your teeth. Instead of, do you want to get in the car now? We can just tell them, no, it's time to get in the car. We need to leave. So looking at that, a lot of questions too, and asking, we're not really asking. They don't have a choice to say no or not. It's time to go get in the car. So we just need to tell them that up front and clearly. And why don't you just say hi? You can just tell them, say hi to Jack. He's at the park. Wonderful and healthy choices. So we know that our children love to have control. They love to feel involved in a situation. And sometimes that's not an option, but as much as possible, we really want to make that an option. We want them to feel involved. We want them to feel like they are able to foster that independence and be a part of our decisions. So you pick the end result, no matter what happens, but they can be involved in that on how. So whether it's pick up blocks or dolls first, they can choose, okay, I need to clean up, but I get to choose which part comes first. If you're at the park and it's time to leave, need to leave right now, you can have them decide, are we going to leave in 1 minute or 2 minutes? Just offering those small choices as you're able to give them kind of that autonomy and flexibility to be able to feel like they're part of these controls, these directions, that they're not just being told what to do all day, every day. And also with that, just remembering to balance the behavior specific praise. We want to incorporate that as well, obviously, throughout. So yeah, the cereal example too, of we're having this for dinner or lunch, breakfast, whatever, but offering them, which plate would you like? Would you like a spoon or a fork, or that kind of thing? Just trying to incorporate them throughout the rules and routines.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to jump back in here, guys. And so we've talked about temperament. We're going to address that through our behavior specific praise. We've talked about developmental stage, and we're going to address that through clear and consistent and gentle rules in our homes. And now I'm going to talk about daily condition, and the way that we're going to address that is through routines. I'm sure that this is not the first time that you've heard that you should have routines in your home. But I'm just here to say that it's true, and it's so very helpful. So when we're talking about routines in our home, predictability is your friend. Again, these kids, for the 100th time, their brains are developing, and for them to know what to expect at what time throughout their day is absolutely crucial for their ability to function. So routines make our kids feel safe, and they're able to anticipate their own needs. So if we do things in the same order every day, and your child knows that, okay, once I come home from preschool, I always get to pick a snack, your kid can anticipate their own needs, that like, on our ride home, I'm getting kind of hungry, but I know when I walk in the door, mom will give me a snack. That's really important, versus if we're sometimes giving snack in the car, sometimes giving it at home, sometimes we get to watch Paw Patrol and then we have a snack. That can just be confusing. And it just helps you anticipate your child's needs based upon timing. So again, knowing my kid always gets a snack after we get home from school can really avoid a lot of those meltdowns or power struggles as kids are trying to get their needs met throughout the day, and you can't blame them. And I think a lot of parents get really queasy about building routines because they're afraid it's going to make their kids really rigid, that my kid's just always going to want to do the things in the same order. It's just going to be crazy and I'm going to be locked down. But the flip side is actually true, is that routines make our kids more flexible. They understand what is going to come next, and you can tweak things here and there, or you can communicate to them, all right, I know you're going to want your TV time when we get home, but we've got to do X, Y, and Z first. But when you have a routine, it actually gives you more room to be flexible, and it allows your kids to remain in a calm headspace when routines do get out of control. But let's go ahead and always keep our routines simple and consistent. When we're talking about building routines, we do not want to make them super elaborate or crazy. We want grandma or a babysitter or anyone to be able to pick up this routine for the child and be successful as well. So for our routines, just a fun fact, kids typically under the age of 5 have very little concept of time. So telling your kid that we're going to go to Disney World in a week, or Christmas is in 9 days, or we are going to go to soccer practice at 3 p.m. today, I'm so sorry, but they just are not picking up on that. So I love to really use visual representation of time for kids. So if you have a calendar on your fridge, a visual schedule, those are going to be awesome. Or I also love to use timers and transition warnings for kids. So transitions, if we're about to go get in the car to go to the park, we can say, alrighty, we have 3 minutes left. I'm going to set a timer on the microwave, and when it goes off, then we're going to get in the car. And transitions, I love for them to be games, dares, anything that can be super fun. Don't be afraid to get creative with your transitions. Kids are so much more likely to transition when it's fun. Like, especially even if they're going to an activity that they may not be super excited about. So be like, okay, it's time to, we got to go to the dentist now. But if you say, okay, when the timer goes off, we have to go to the dentist, and everyone's going to pick their favorite animal, and we're going to crawl to the door. And then you have a whole zoo in your house who's excited to go to the dentist, and everyone's in the car. And I've got just a couple of visuals for you. I think it's really helpful to have some concrete examples of what our visuals for routines can look like. So the first one, is going to be all the way on your left. I love it. It's called a time timer. It's a visual visual clock, and you can get one that is a handheld one that you can set for an hour, or they also just have all sorts of apps that you can download for free or just for a couple dollars on your phone to set a visual timer. So this essentially, when it gets set, it's that ticking hand, and your kid can see how much time is left. So they might not know what 3 minutes is, but they know that when all the red is gone, it's time to move on to the next activity. Another one that I love to do if you're looking at something that's a couple days or a couple weeks away is to do a paper chain countdown. And you can tear off a piece of paper every day. This one is from one of my favorite resources, Busy Toddler. So this is a little Christmas countdown. And on every strip of paper, they've got a fun thing for the kids to do that day in anticipation for Christmas. You don't have to do that, but that's just another way to get your kids involved with time. And then the last one would be a daily visual schedule. This one I found on Amazon. So you're just easy enough to just Google or look on Etsy or Pinterest about a daily calendar for your home. It seems so repetitive if you were doing the same things over and over again, but this structure is really, really important. And I really promise you it will be helpful with your routines. And so, for example, this calendar is already a preset calendar. Kid gets an expo marker and they get to check off all the things that they've done. So if you've got a little bit of a crazier schedule, they also have some calendars that have Velcro on them where you can change the order of things every day. But having those pictures for a kid to be able to anticipate what's coming next can be so very helpful.
And Shelly, just to encourage parents with that too, if this is new to you, if you're just starting out trying to understand, okay, how do I make this routine thing helpful for my children? This can start out as easy as, oh, clip art on my computer and I'll drag a bed and then I'll put a toothbrush. It does not have to be the most beautiful, the most display worthy, but yeah, just starting somewhere is a great place to start.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you can also do, so we've got daily visuals that you could work with your family, but if only a particular routine is a struggle for your family, so maybe bedtime is a particular struggle for your family, you could just do a visual schedule for bedtime, and that can be helpful. And having your kids pick out which pictures they want to use for the visual schedule can be really fun as well. And then this is just another little sidebar about routines, is that we always want to use reinforcement over punishment in building our routines. So when we're talking about TV time, dessert, all of these fun, lovely things that our kids probably get really excited about during the day, I do want to encourage you that building some of them into your routine is okay, but it's better behaviorally for your kids to be able to earn these rewards than to just expect them. So this is where I see a lot of routines go haywire, is when the most fun thing on the routine, we sadly just don't get to that day, or the family has taken it away as some kind of consequence. So understandably so, we get in a fight with your sibling and it's like, okay, TV's off for the day. That's fine. But if you flipped the script and said, well, we never watch TV unless everyone in our family is kind and uses gentle hands with each other, and then your kids can learn to earn that throughout the day versus just expecting it. And I do want to remind you that if all we do is take away all the fun things that our kids do, we're going to run out of things to take away. And then you've lost control. And if we consider, let's just add these fun things throughout the day, and our kids are learning how to be responsible and how to earn rewards, that can be really impactful.
And setting ourselves up where we're not saying, okay, no TV time, and then realizing, yeah, I really need that TV for some time or to figure out finishing dinner, and then you do end up giving it anyway. So really just making sure that the things that if you are taking something away, it's something that you can actually follow through with.
Yeah. And something that's not going to make your life miserable.
Yes.
Okay, and the last approach to behavior that we'll discuss today, and then we'll get into some questions if you guys have anything in the chat, is going to be our reaction to challenging behavior. So when we talk about behavior, it typically follows this bell curve pattern. So at the beginning of the behavior, there are likely some precursor behaviors. Maybe your kid's stomping their feet, maybe they got a little scowl on their face, maybe they're whining a little bit. The behavior is eventually going to peak into whatever that form looks like for your kid. So we are screaming, hitting, crying, throwing ourselves on the floor. And then there's a letdown of the behavior when typically we start to regain our breath, our heart rate regulates, and the child is able to kind of come back, enter back into the situation, and move on. So when we talk about behavior, the time to teach in your behavior is not at level 10. And I like to use the analogy that when I am having conflict with my spouse, or if I am having conflict with a coworker, just having like a really hard emotional time, I really don't want my husband to, like, in the middle of my griping, to be like, well, you know what, Shelly, next time you should have done that. And we don't use our words like that. And kids are the exact same way. In the height of behavior, they are typically unavailable for learning. So just remember that when we're in the height of the behavior, it's all downhill from here. Just remain calm and work it out as best you can. But we're really going to focus on the before and the after of our behaviors. So the beginning of behavior during the precursor behaviors is the absolute best time to be teaching. So if you notice the huffing, the puffing, or tears start to well, those are the times where we want to step in. We really want to guide what's going on. And then at the end of a behavior is also a good time to teach, but just a little caution that sometimes for our kids who have really sensitive temperaments, a recap of the behavior can come across as shameful, and it can be a difficult time to sort through those emotions. So we're going to stop and analyze at the beginning of a behavior. Does my child understand the task or the expectation? Do they have the skill to do it? And how is their bucket? So this is just going to review what we've already talked about. Is my child developmentally ready to pursue this task? Did my child have an okay day, or are they just tired or hungry or upset for some reason totally unrelated to this? So if you answer no to some of these tasks, then we're going to step in and we're like, you know what, like, I really hate to clean my room too. It's so hard. Would you like some help? And have your child ask for help. If you've noticed that they had a substitute teacher today at school and things were just wonky, they just might need a little bit more mom, dad, grandma, nanny time. So when we are teaching behavior, again, once we've checked all these things off on the left, the height of the behavior is what your child is trying to communicate to you. And all behavior is communication. The biggest thing is that we really encourage you to remain calm. Our kids are going to match the pitch and the intensity of how we're reacting to the behavior. So thinking about if your kid just like got juice out of the fridge when they weren't supposed to, it's very inconvenient and you're glad you didn't have to pick up that mess, but it's not a super huge deal. So remaining calm and remaining neutral. But if your child has accidentally pulled a knife out of the dishwasher, that's a time where you can become more animated and give it a little bit more gusto. So during the height of behavior, we're going to analyze what are they saying. And in behavior analysis, we tend to target these functions of behavior in 3 different areas. So those would be attention, escape or delay of an activity, and to get an item or activity. So we're going to use these 3 icons down here to help us orient. Attention would be the megaphone, escape, the rocket ship, and to get an item, obviously that little present down there. So what we've got to do is we have to break the cycle of communication. The reason that behavior keeps happening is because we keep interpreting the communication correctly, and our child is going to do it again. So we don't want to accept the communication, and the behavior does not ultimately lead to these things. So the one that we'll focus on first is attention. And attention is a funny one because I think when I discuss with parents about functions of behavior, no one ever thinks it's attention, but as a professional, I think it's almost always attention. So just keep that in mind, because as their brains are developing, attention is not necessarily always positive attention. Attention is reprimands or telling me the direction again, or it is anything that you stop and reorient your focus towards your kiddo. So these situations are typically our power struggle situations. I love to do the sippy cup and the high chair example of your kid has their sippy cup and they throw it off the high chair, and you pick them back up and you tell them, no, we don't throw our sippy cup, and you put it back in, and your kid smiles and then knock it off again. It's not because they don't know that they shouldn't keep their sippy cup on there. It's not that they don't want their milk. It's because it's hilarious and they're influencing your behavior. So kids like to see, what can I do in order to make mom or dad or grandma do something else? So it's a pretty fun game, but we will interpret it correctly as we move along. So for attention situations, we're going to use a gentle ignore. We're going to limit our words, our eye contact, and our physical attention. And give the attention when appropriate. And sometimes during these attention seeking behaviors, you need to take a grown-up break, and that's okay. Sometimes it's best to just, as long as your child is safe, to step away from a situation and take a time to breathe. And then that gives your kid a chance to be like, oh, what I'm trying to communicate to mom or nanny or grandpa, what I'm trying to tell them, it's making them want to not be as close to me. And that's obviously the opposite effect of what your kid is trying to get. So I would encourage you, sometimes it's just best to step away from the situation, take 30 seconds to breathe in the other room, and come back with a clearer head. If your kiddo is trying to get out of something, so this is typically like they don't want to get dressed in the morning, they don't want to take a bath, etc. We really want to stay the course. If your kid says, no, I'm not going to put my socks on, you can say, well, it is time to put your socks on, and I'm going to help you. So we're going to ignore their protest of their communication, and we're not going to negotiate or change the rules. Again, these are your homes. You are the grown-ups, and you get to make the rules. And when it's time to put our socks on, that's okay that your kid maybe disagrees with that schedule. And again, we'll just offer a very gentle, I'm going to help you. And if your kid is engaging in some behavior to get more of something, to get an item or activity, so they want more iPad time, they would like more dessert, we're going to use a gentle ignore. We're going to limit our words and our eye contact and communicate some other options. So back to where we talked about giving our kids healthy choices, to say, okay, so sorry, iPad time is all done for the day, but would you like to brush your teeth first, or would you like to put your pajamas on first? So just always offering them a choice of what is the next step. And do not give the thing. Like if your kid has a whole big old tantrum over getting iPad or getting goldfish in the grocery store, really just the most important thing to remember is that they still do not get the item. It's so hard. So hard, and you just want it to be over, and you might be embarrassed, or you might be frustrated, you might be tired from your own day. But teaching our kids that this behavior that you've engaged in is not a form of communication that I accept. This all sounds good and fine, but how do we implement it, and how do we take it home into our houses? Just to remember that behavior has to be taught. It absolutely has to be taught. And so when we're talking about the behavior curve, at the height of the behavior, honestly, it's just a little bit too late. And we are just making sure our child is staying safe, and we are communicating to them that they are loved, and you are there to keep them safe and protect them. But ultimately, we always want to think about, how do I make this less likely to happen in the future? That's the biggest thing about behavior, is it happening less often tomorrow or next week. So what you might need to do is considering lowering the expectations of the behavior. So if you have asked your child to clean up their room and that just really didn't go well last time, maybe ask your child to clean up 3 items this time, and allow them some time to be successful with the request you've given them. And you just might need to help your child immediately next time. A lot of families get a little nervous about over assisting their kids, even if you know that your kid can do the activity. It's totally fine to help them, and it makes them feel seen and known, even though I absolutely know how to empty the dishwasher. I love it when my husband comes up behind me and helps me empty the dishwasher. And your kids are the same way. They've all got their expectations that they need to participate in your home, but it's really lovely to receive some extra help sometimes. And we want to reward our kids for engaging in appropriate behavior by making it easier to do. So if your kid immediately starts cleaning up their room and you're like, oh, that's nice and unusual, go ahead and step in and help them do it. And they'll see that my family sees that I'm being a great citizen of our household. And again, we're going to focus on communication. Practice.
With practice too, Shelley, I'll just say remembering that things sometimes may get worse before they get better. If you're just implementing these new strategies, trying out routines and rules for the first time, or for the first time really sticking with it, some things, maybe that tantrum in the grocery store is going to last a little longer this time, but for the hope that in the future they're learning that that no longer works. But before you get to that point, they may test you, they may push the boundary just a little further, just to make sure that their current communication won't still get the job done.
Yeah, that's a huge point, is that sometimes when we implement some of these things, if the behavior gets worse, an encouraging note to all of you, it's probably because you're doing the right thing. It's because you have flipped the script and your kid is like, wait a second, this usually works and usually I don't have to put my socks on. So the kid is likely going to amplify the behavior a little bit more to get the same result. But stand your ground and really know it's such a weird mindset. But if the behavior gets worse, and not like crazy worse, but if your kid starts screaming louder or their tantrum lasts longer than it typically does, it really does mean that you're likely on the right track for that communication. So, and that just is a note for you to know that, like, next time I ask them to put their socks on, I'm going to have a little chat with them and connect with them before I ask them that direction. And as we move into any questions or other conversations you guys would like to have, this is a lot of information. And I would love for you to just pick one area to focus on per week, 1 week at a time. So again, these are the areas that we talked about. So it might be that you pick up behavior specific praise this week. It might be that you really focus on the rules that you're going to deliver this week. It might be that this is the week that you put up a calendar on your schedule, on your refrigerator, but really only choosing one of these things to do at a time, doing it slowly and seeing what results you might have. So if anyone has any questions or comments or anything that you'd like to chat about continuously, we'll stay on here as well and answer some questions from the chat. But if anyone needs anything at all following this presentation, again, my name is Shelly and Marie has been our lovely co-host. My email is listed on here if you want to take a picture and shoot an email if you have any additional questions or want to connect about any of the therapies or services we offer at Child and Family. But I will go ahead and stop sharing the screen and we'll be able to pull up the chat and see if anyone has any questions. But otherwise, if you don't have anything, thank you so much for joining us. And we know that time is precious and getting on another Zoom call is not everyone's favorite thing, but we see you and we're so thankful that you're here to share with us. So we'll go ahead and stop the share now. I'll pull up some of the chat. All righty. So one question we've got is, what do you recommend when they don't listen to the rules? Marie, have any thoughts?
That is great. I was going to just point out too, I'm not sure if the recording were able to stop that on your end, or I think someone's probably working on that right now. I just saw.